Okay, I'm back. I had to go to see the massage therapist and also get some stuff at Home Depot. I was the only person in there without a mask. All right, so here we go again. And those who are left, this is from COVID-19, The Great Reset, the book by the founder of the World Economic Forum. His name is Klaus Schwab. Those who are left hopeless, jobless, and without assets could easily turn against those who are better off. So this is what we left off with, how there's going to be social unrest and people resorting to violence. One of the reasons why I moved out of New York City in the first place. Where are people going to go when the average rent is $3,500 a month and you don't have that kind of money, right? They're going to start stealing and start hurting people. Already, some 30% of Americans have zero or negative wealth. We weren't poor enough, so they had to pull this nonsense on us, right? If more people emerge from this current crisis with neither money nor jobs or access to health care, and if these people become desperate and angry, such scenes as the recent escape of prisoners in Italy or the looting following Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans in 2005 might become commonplace. Governments have to resort to using paramilitary or military forces to quell, for example, riots or attacks on property. Societies could begin to disintegrate. And that's exactly what the plan is, right? They want the UN blue helmets everywhere policing the world. That's what the whole thing about defunding the police is, right? If we really wanted to defund the police, wouldn't the first thing you talk about is how do we keep people safe in the first place, right? Shouldn't everyone be armed then, right? The big discussion that should go on before disarmament of the police is arming everyone in the population who is not mentally ill so that you don't need the police as much, correct? So that's how you know that this was already planned, because there's no rational discussion on anything. Amplified. So they're using everything that was going on in this world, they're amplifying it using COVID-19, just like they're amplifying this RNA sequence in the PCR test and calling it an infection. There are different ways to define what constitutes social unrest, but over the past 2 years, more than 100 significant anti-government protests have taken place around the world, in rich and poor countries alike, from the Yellow Vest riots in France to demonstrations against strongmen in countries such as Bolivia, Iran, and Sudan. Most of the latter were suppressed by brutal crackdowns, and many went into hibernation, like the global economy, when governments forced their populations into lockdown to contain the pandemic. But after the interdiction to gather in groups and to take the streets is lifted, it is hard to imagine that old grievances and temporarily suppressed social disquiet will not erupt again, possibly with renewed strength. In the post-pandemic era, numbers of unemployed, worried, miserable, resentful, sick, and hungry will have swelled dramatically. Personal tragedies will accrue, fomenting anger, resentment, and exasperation in different social groups, including the unemployed, the poor, the migrants, the prisoners, the homeless, all of those left out. How could all this pressure not end in an eruption? Yes, well, the eruption of violence is what the government wants, right? The government is constantly trying to put us into these little groups here: unemployed, the poor, the black, the white, the women, the men, the in-betweens, right? Everybody, everybody on this list here has a common enemy, right? It's the government is your common enemy. Social phenomena often exhibit the same characteristics as pandemics. And as observed in previous pages, tipping points apply equally to both. When poverty, a sense of being disenfranchised, and powerlessness reach a certain tipping point, disruptive social action often becomes the option of last resort. And that's what they want, right? They want you desperate. They want you emotional. It's problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialectic. Jacob Wallenberg, a Swedish industrialist, said in March 2020, if the crisis goes on for long, unemployment could reach 20 to 30%, while economies could contract by 20 to 30%, there will be no recovery. There will be social unrest. There will be violence. There will be socioeconomic consequences, dramatic unemployment. Citizens will suffer dramatically. Some will die. Others will feel awful. We are now beyond the threshold of what Wallenberg considered to be worrying, with unemployment exceeding 20 to 30% in many countries around the world, and with most economies having contracted in the second quarter of 2020 beyond the level previously considered of concern. At the time of writing this book, COVID 19 has already unleashed a global wave of social unrest. Did COVID 19 do it, or did the governments and the media do it? I keep saying the government is the virus. It started in the US with Black Lives Matter protests following the killing of George Floyd at the end of May 2020. But it spread rapidly around the world. How? COVID 19 was a determining element. George Floyd's death was the spark that lit the fires of social unrest. Why? Why this one guy? Right? If you look at the statistics in America, there are thousands of people shot every year, right? Why this one guy? He's so special? Huh? Over the past 6 years, nearly 100 African Americans have died in police custody, but it took the killing of George Floyd to trigger a national uprising. If you actually look at the figures, there are more white people shot by the police than there are black people. Now, there are more white people in America. So the ratio, right? There's only like 13% of the population is black. So the ratio of police killing black people is higher than the ratio of white people killed. But shouldn't we be talking about police killing any of us, right? Shouldn't the conversation be we think there's too many superfluous deaths when police are being violent against Americans, and so we go after them? No, of course not, because white lives do not matter. The only lives that matter are those that are going to get everyone angry and protesting and virtue signaling, right? The mortality rate inflicted by COVID 19 on Black Americans was 2.4 times higher than for white Americans. I tell you what, I read an article about the 1918 flu, and they were saying the same thing that they said back then that Native American Indians and the Blacks were more likely to get the Spanish flu, right? They have been using divide and conquer since the beginning of time. Like, what is even real anymore? You know, I can't even tell you what's real anymore. People, they've lied so much that I'm just such a skeptic. It's absolutely crazy. In May 2020, unemployment among African Americans stood at 16.8% versus a national level of 13.3%. Biographical availability is why Black people are not employed. The absence of full time employment leads to increased participation in social movements. Well, how come everybody I see in the Black Lives Matter, it's like 97% white people? I guess they don't count. Soros doesn't care who he pays as long as they do what they say. There are no mechanical triggers for social unrest. Yes, there is. You freaking pay them and they'll show up. That's what it is. Rent a parade, rent a protest. I actually don't know anyone in real life who goes to protests, and I'm a pretty militant person. I mean, I do know Adam Kokesh. He did have a protest that I didn't go to in D.C. because I didn't want to get beat down. He had it at the Jefferson Memorial. I mean, my protest is every day not wearing a mask, right? Every day moving home, not putting up with this nonsense. If people won't even not wear the mask, why are they going to show up for a protest, right? Think about it. How many people you know actually stand up for anything? If you won't do the littlest things, why would you go to a protest? Like, you really care? Oh, so here we go. For this reason, strong individualistic societies like the US could be more at risk than European or Asian countries that have either a greater sense of solidarity, like in Southern Europe, or a better social system for assisting the underprivileged, like Northern Europe. Yeah, they've already got people to think in a communist fashion, right? Countries like Italy, for example, possess a strong social safety net, not anymore, and the strong sense of solidarity, particularly in intergenerational terms. No, not really. I mean, they've been flooding Italy with Africans and people from all over the world, and so they're actually bringing down their cohesiveness. In a similar vein, the Confucianism prevalent in so many Asian countries places a sense of duty and generational solidarity before individual rights. And this is what they want, right? That's why they take you at like age 3 now away from your parents and your family. They want you in school. Yeah, they're not immune from social unrest, but they'll run your ass over with a tank like they do in China. Or now they just shut off your WeChat, shut off your money, and you're not allowed to do anything. All right, y'all. If this ends, like if this, what's been happening is it's been cutting off in the middle of me doing stuff, like the camera. So that's why this next one that was before this one is going to be really short because the camera just stopped. Anyways, I just wanted to mention that. The return of big government. Well, when have we not had big government? In the words of John Micklethwait and Adrian Woolridge, the COVID-19 pandemic has made government important again, not just powerful again, but also vital again. It matters enormously whether your country has a good health service, competent bureaucrats, and sound finances. Good government is the difference between living and dying. Yeah, all of us with extra good government are going to be the ones dying from starvation and unemployment. Acute crises contribute to boosting the power of the state over the past 5 centuries. See, these people study us. They've been studying us for many years. It's always been the case, and there is no reason why it should be different with the COVID-19 pandemic, except for we're trying to get this word out here to people, right? We're trying to show them that this is nonsense and that no matter what excuse the government comes up with, right? They always come up with some like beautiful saintly excuse to send you to war or take away your kids or take away your rights, and it doesn't matter because you are supposed to have common law rights. You were innately born free. And these governments exist such that you will not have rights. So, anyways, we're trying to get people to think higher than this, right? Higher than just, oh, whatever the government says goes. I need to be scared. I need to do whatever they say, or oh my God, I'm going to die. Well, okay, look what's happening with unemployment. Such as the case with the Seven Years' War from 1756 to 1763, described as the first truly global war that involved all the great powers of Europe at the time. Since then, the response to major crises have always further consolidated the power of the state, starting with taxation, an inherent and essential attribute of sovereignty belonging as a matter of right to every independent government. Yeah, these government beings have a right to your sovereignty, right? Over your body, over your energy, because that's what currency is. Currency is the representation of the energy that you spend at work, and the government thinks they own you. This is here we go, the scam, right? Oh, we're only going to tax the rich. They always do this. France's top rate of income tax was zero in 1914, a year after the end of World War One. And a year after the end of World War One, it was 50%. Canada introduced income tax in 1917 as a temporary measure to finance the war And then it expanded dramatically during World War II with a flat 20% surtax imposed on all income tax payable by persons other than corporations and the introduction of high marginal tax rates at 69%. Rates came down after the war but remained substantially higher than they had been before. Similarly, during World War II, income tax in America turned from a class tax to a mass tax, with the number of payers rising from 7 million in 1940 to 42 million in 1945. So more than about 6 times the people in 5 years. The most progressive tax years in U.S. history from 1944 to 1945, with an applied rate 94% rate applied to any income above $200,000, the equivalent in 2009 of 2.4 million. So if you, good God, they took everything from you. Such top rates, often denounced as confiscatory by those who had to pay them, would not drop below 80% for the next 20 years. At the end of World War II, many other countries adopted similar and extreme tax measures. In the UK during the war, the top income tax rate rose to an extraordinarily stunning 99.25%. So this is why you have the super rich making their little charities, right? That's how they hide their money. In fact, I went out with this really rich Chinese guy one time. He had his own airplane and had founded a couple universities in China, and he was laughing at me, asking, how much did I pay in taxes last year? And I told him like 60 grand. And he laughed and he was like, I didn't pay anywhere near that much. And the way he was doing it is his boss contributed his salary to the charity. He had his cars and his airplanes and everything in his charity's name, right? And if you really look up what charity's about, you look up the robber barons and you read about them, you'll find out how they hide their money. It's all a big scam. So I guess there's going to be some sort of new tax here. New because of war, right? That's how they did it. So did the Cold War. So worried about the communist rebellion. Okay. Yeah. So worried about it that now we have communists in office everywhere. Today, the situation is fundamentally different. In intervening decades in the Western world, the role of the state has shrunk considerably. It has? Where? Exogenous shock of such magnitude as one inflicted by COVID-19 could be addressed with purely market-based solutions. Altering the delicate balance between private and public realms. Yeah, they don't want anything, right? So people think, communism is the state controls the corporations, right? And in fascism, the corporations control the government. What's the difference? They're all the same. Our government is a corporation, by the way. Look it up. In a surprising and sudden turnaround, the idea, which would have been anathema just a few years ago, that governments can further the public good while runaway economies without supervision can wreak havoc on social welfare, may now become the norm. On the dial that measures the continuum between government and the markets, the needle has decisively moved towards the left. Yeah, look at all the billionaires. They're all leftists. They all made their money off of the government helping them out, giving them a leg up. Who do you think builds the Formula One stadiums? Who builds the baseball stadiums? Who pays for that? The taxpayer. First time since Margaret Thatcher captured the zeitgeist of an era when declaring that there is no such thing as society, governments have the upper hand. Everything that comes in the post pandemic era will lead us to rethink government's role. Instead of simply fixing market failures when they arise, they should, as suggested by economist Mariana Mazzucato,